Welcome everybody to the Recreate Your Health Project. My name is Miranda Dano, and I'm honored to introduce you to my dear friend, Ashley Lee. She is the founder of the Elite Warrior Project. She has a master's in performance psychology, which I think is so cool. Like, we could probably do a whole other interview just on me asking questions about that, because I think that's interesting. And she's also a certified high performance coach, which is how we know each other. So Ashley, welcome.
Thank you, Miranda.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So I'm going to dive in and just start firing away as long as you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your background and tell us why you chose coaching? What brought you to coaching?
Yeah, of course. That's a great question. Because let me tell you, when I first started, it is not something that I had intended to do. Most people know, but a lot of our followers and a lot of the new people that are going to be listening to this video don't know that I was in the Navy and I was diagnosed with MS. So because of that diagnosis, I had to get medically retired from the military. At that point, I had a decision to make on what to do with the rest of my life, right? The military was my life, and I was extremely proud to serve, and I had a purpose and I had a mission every day. We knew what that was, and every day what we were doing was for that mission and that purpose. So getting out of that, I had a lot of decisions to make, and one of those was what was going to be my new mission, right, and my new purpose. So I started doing a lot of self-development. I started reading a lot of books. I started getting into a lot of the thought leaders that are out there now, a lot of the performance coaches and things like that. And I knew that I wanted to continue to serve, especially to serve other people. And I figured, with my journey through personal development and everything that I've learned and everything that I've been through, I figured what better way to continue to serve others than help them walk through the path that I've already walked.
Yeah. Awesome. That's amazing. So tell me more about the Elite Warrior Project, because that led you to sort of put that piece together, right?
Yeah. So the Elite Warrior Project is more or less just kind of a specialty of, the coaching and the break-off. That's a program that I started really to kind of help other veterans who have MS. So I have been working with the National MS Society and going to some of their support groups and just kind of meeting other people who have MS and talking to them, finding out their story. And what I realized is there's kind of this disconnect between, civilians and military veterans, especially military in general, right? Because we're only 1% of the population. A lot of people can't relate to the struggle that we go through on a daily basis, not just with the military, but then having to separate from the military because of MS. So the Elite Warrior Project became a thing when I wanted to kind of make that bridge and that connection between those who have MS and veterans. So I started working with the National MS Society, and we created our own specialized self-help group for veterans, their family and friends who have MS.
I love that. I think it's such an inspiration to have certain things, come across your way in life, and instead of sort of crumbling and feeling lost forever, you're like, you know what, I'm going to handle this and I'm going to help other people handle it. So I think it's such an inspiration that you put that together.
Thank you. Yeah. And one of the biggest things I've learned from that, is that there's support and there's growth in helping other people too, right? Helping them also helps you through your own journey. So it's great.
Yeah. Awesome. With that in mind, helping others through your journey and your background with, coaching and MS, and, I'm sure taking care of yourself is a huge priority for you. Can you share with our audience what your 3 best practices are for staying healthy?
Yeah, of course. One of those is just having a daily routine, right? So I have a morning routine that I go to, as well as an evening routine that kind of helps me wind down at night, especially because sleep doesn't really come very easily. Sometimes that's due to the MS and other symptoms that I may experience, but I think that it's really important that you get yourself into kind of a routine that you can count on. Um, One of those things in the morning routine is yoga. So for me, yoga is a way that kind of helps me release my body in the morning, kind of wake up, get it moving a little bit. Especially with MS, I have a lot of, tightness and a lot of pain in the morning when I wake up. So yoga
Sure.
is a great way, not only, physically to get your body going, but mentally as well, because you're practicing the movements, you're concentrating on your breath. So it has kind of several benefits there for me in the morning to do some yoga.
I love that. And it's such a unique time that we are all in right now. And I think one of the good things that has come from everybody's routines sort of having to change all of a sudden is that it's a great opportunity to adopt new things, right? So if you've been thinking about wanting to maybe start your morning by stretching or adding in some yoga or whatever the case may be, man, now's the time to do it, right? Like you're home every day. Even if you are still like working virtually, you're not commuting anymore, you have, you're going to have a little bit more time in your day to implement some things. So I think definitely stretching or moving your body in whatever way is appropriate for you in the morning is huge for people. And it's one of those things that like you hear about it a lot, like Brendan says,
Yeah,
right? Ashley and I were both trained by Brendan Burchard. He always says what's common sense is not always common practice.
right.
So I think especially like moving in the morning is one of those things that everybody's like, they may have heard that before, but are you really doing it? And
Yeah.
if you're not, man, now's the time to give it a go.
Right. And it's important to find something that fits your lifestyle, right? I mean, that may not always be the case or easy for you if you have kids or other things going on, but there's always something you can do and shifts you can make in your time and in your schedule to kind of fit those important things in, even if it's a 10 or 15-minute walk in the morning just to wake up and get some fresh air.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. What else? Did you give you one more practice for staying
Yeah.
healthy?
Yep. So the last practice, I would say that really helps me would be journaling. I
Mm.
do that in the morning and as well in the evening. You know, I can say that that is one thing that really kind of helps keep my mindset in the right spot. There's difficult times during the day. There's also difficult things that we go through, and we tend to focus on those a lot, right? We tend to ruminate on them, like, why did this happen? What did I do wrong? What could I have done better, right? All these things that just keep us locked in on that negativity. So I think by journaling and writing out those positive things and asking yourself positive questions, it it redirects your focus and it shifts your mindset from, you know, what's not working, what went wrong, to what went right. You know, what things do I still have in my life? What's the positive that I can look at? What are some things that I can be grateful for that happened today?
Awesome. So when you journal, do you specifically prompt yourself to look forward to things that are happening that you can be excited about? Or do you like at the end of the day sort of journal about things that you feel really grateful for? Or how does that work?
Yeah, so I don't know how many viewers are actually familiar with it, but I do use the High Performance Planner from Brendan Burchard.
Yeah.
So he has a list of really great prompts in there. In the morning, you know, it kind of helps get your mindset in the right place for the rest of the day, right? So it already
Yeah.
puts you into a positive outlook for your day. And then in the evening, the prompts are kind of reflective, right? So it goes and it asks you questions to reflect back on your day, like what you could be grateful for, right? And what things kind of worked, maybe where you might have slipped, things like that. So it just kind of takes you through a set of questions that make you reflect back on the day, but they are geared towards the positive.
Love that. I love that planner. Of course, I use that planner and it's definitely my favorite too. So good.
Yeah.
So good. Okay, so when you, a couple questions that are a little bit more time sensitive to what people are sort of working through right now. When you are speaking to your audience, talking to your people, what do you find that they mostly need from you right now?
I think the important thing right now to remember in what a lot of people need is just the pick me up, to remember to focus on the positive, right? I think especially right now with everything happening, we're so focused on the negative, and social media is just flooding us, whether it's the news or social media. It's just flooding our minds with all this negative thoughts, negative news, negative statements, negative things, right? Like the
Yeah,
president doesn't like this, or Congress doesn't like this, people don't like this, the Navy doesn't like this, right? Nobody's really
sure.
focusing on the positive. And I think especially if you have underlying health conditions that already make kind of your days more of a struggle, I think it's really important that we focus on the positive things and things that we can control.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think that's really good advice for people. It's easy to get stuck in that loop of, I'm not somebody who really actively seeks out checking the news. It's not part of my daily practice. It's not something I do a lot. And even I've been doing it more lately because I want to know what's going on. But then you do get sort of stuck in that loop. So it's a tricky thing to do. And I've found that what happens is when you have those things, front of mind all the time, it starts to affect your inner dialogue, right? Like everybody's at home, doesn't have as much time like interacting with people, which is when you can focus on others, right? So it's just you and all these churning thoughts in your head, right? And for me, the inner dialogue is something that I always have to sort of make sure that I'm staying on top of. Do you have any advice on how to more positively navigate that?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard when you want to try to take control of our thoughts, right? Like you
Yeah,
said, it's so easy to get caught up in that like whirlwind of chaos and all the negativity that's just flooding. But I think what's really important and what a lot of people forget is that we have control of our thoughts and our mind, right? Like we have the power to take control. The
yeah,
thing is a lot of people just aren't aware of what's happening inside their heads, right? They're feeling angry, they're feeling sad, they have all these emotions, but they don't know where they're coming from.
yeah,
So I just, I think awareness is the first step that we need to take, and you really need to know what's going on inside your head, right? If you don't know that there's a problem or that something's wrong, you can't fix it. So
yeah,
it starts with becoming aware that these things are happening, right? Like, why am I feeling this way? Or why am I thinking this? And then you just have to really give yourself a break, disconnect from the social media, disconnect from the TV, from all the electronics, like things that just flood us with negativity, and go do something else, right? Get up and get moving, go take a walk with your kids or play card games, read your favorite book, or even do some yoga if that helps you kind of relax. But the important thing is we just need to create time to disconnect from all that negativity and then reconnect with what's happening inside of us.
yeah. Um, so I know we spoke a lot about that there are negative thoughts that come from like social media or news and things like that. Can you help us with your background? I'm sure, in performance psychology, I think that's so cool. Can you help us sort of better understand like where else these negative thoughts might be coming from? Is it always like an external factor, or are there other places as well?
Yeah, I think, what happens there is our brain has been evolving over time since, we since we came from the caveman, right? And since
Sure,
we
sure.
evolved, and our brain back then had fight, flight, or freeze, right? It's to protect us. It's to keep us
Yeah,
safe, and that's how we became to, the great human beings that we are today with the capacity
sure.
that we have. And a lot of these thoughts, they come from childhood experiences, right? They come from past experiences, and we're just building them and reinforcing them with actions and behaviors that we currently take right now. So
Mm,
our brain has these subconscious automatic thoughts that are related to those past experiences that we probably don't even know exist, because a lot of us haven't taken the time to do the work and to dig into those thoughts and why we feel that way or think that way. But
Sure.
you know, when we come into a situation, our brain wants to keep us safe, and it wants to optimize itself and save energy. So it goes to that immediate automatic thought that it has replayed and stored so many times, and it applies it to the current situation that we're in.
Okay.
So
Ah,
it's something that is just being taken from past experience. Those experience then become our emotions, right? And then our emotions, those affect our behaviors, and then our behaviors are feeding back into that negative thought cycle. So it just becomes a real nasty negative loop.
yeah. Okay. So how can we practically sort of teach our audience how to see when this is happening and then do something more helpful? Like the idea of getting out and moving, I think is amazing. But I
Mm-hmm.
think, like, is there some technique that we can teach people that will help them figure out when it's going on and then something they can do like right in that moment?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of techniques out there, and I think again, you know, it just kind of depends on the person, but it really, really all comes down to just awareness. Like I said before, if you're not aware that a problem exists or that something is not right, then you're not going to know to fix it, right? So you
Sure.
have to first just become aware of those thoughts, and then, you know, once you keep a thought journal or you become aware of those thoughts, however that works for you, right? Some people may need to write it down daily. Some people may need to just do some reflection. Some people will be able to catch it right on the spot. But I think once you figure out a way to become aware of those thoughts, then we can start implementing the process that that can help us kind of break that cycle and then redirect our thoughts into something more positive. And I have definitely one of those processes here that I have available for people who are
Awesome.
listening, as well as for my audience as well.
Awesome. Okay, so let's assume that our listeners are at least somewhat aware of, that loop that's going on in their
Mhm.
head. I think especially now, people, you're sort of forced to be aware of that loop that's in your head right now,
Yeah.
given the current climate. So let's assume that people do have some awareness of what's happening or are new to having some awareness of what's happening in their head and want to do something more proactive to navigate that. What can you teach them? How can we help them?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've kind of become really familiar with, and I've kind of tweaked it a little bit to help myself, right? Because it's personal, it's for me. So,
Sure.
but it really kind of helps, and it takes people through this process to where they can take that negative thought, move through the process, and then transform it into that positive power statement. So, the first step of that process is really just to stop. Yeah. We're so busy, we're so caught up, we
Mm.
go from thought to thought, we just bounce around. So the first thing, you know, when you start to feel that feeling inside or get that emotion or you have that negative thought, is just to stop and to notice it, right? Don't attach to it, don't create any value to it, don't let it have power over you by following that thought and going down that rabbit hole. Yeah. So that's the first step, is just to stop and to become aware, to observe that thought.
Sure. So like no judgment, kind of like the meditation thing that they tell you when you're new to starting meditation, where they're like, a thought's going to come into your head because that's how your brain works, right?
Right.
Gonna happen.
Yeah.
And when it does, don't judge yourself or say, hey, I'm failing or I'm not doing a good job or I shouldn't be thinking about that. Just think,
Yeah.
oop, there's a thought, right? So
Yeah.
it's that
Yeah.
same idea where it's like, there that thing is. Got it.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
So
Then
then,
what do we do?
you know, once you've stopped and kind of gathered yourself, so you're no longer, you know, running down this rabbit hole, the next thing is just to breathe. Yeah.
Mm.
Sometimes we get so caught up and we're running through the day, we're running through these thoughts, and we just pile them on without ever kind of diving deeper into them and realizing what's really happening underneath. So the breathing technique will just kind of help you stop and relax, right? Again, with the breathing technique, it's kind of really what works for you. There's so many of them out there that it's hard to say that this is the best one, right?
Sure.
But one for me that I learned, especially through the military, is called the four square breathing technique. And it's
Okay.
really simple and it's really easy to use pretty much anywhere, which is why I like this one a lot. And the basics of it is you just inhale for 4 seconds, you hold for 4 seconds, you exhale for 4 seconds, and then you hold for 4 seconds. And you just
Okay.
kind of repeat that cycle for 1 to 2 minutes or however long it takes for you to kind of calm down and gather yourself.
Okay. Awesome. That's great. I feel like everybody can do that. I haven't heard that technique, but I love it. Super
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah, it's very simple, and what it does is it also kind of helps take your focus away from that negative thought for that 1 to 2 minutes, right? So you're no longer focusing on that negativity, that negative thought, that negative emotion, whatever it may be, and now you're focusing on your breathing and counting, right?
Yeah, for sure. I find a lot of peace in counting. I know that's a weird thing, but I think a lot of people do that where you sort of like count things in your head or sort of like get into a rhythm of something in your head without really thinking about it. A lot of people get songs stuck in their head kind of for the same reason.
Yeah,
So there's a lot of power in counting, which is such a funny and random thing.
yeah,
But I like that. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So we stop and notice what's happening. We do the breathing thing.
Yeah.
And then what? What's the next step?
So the next step would be to reflect, right? Like I said, we often just jump on these thoughts and we just follow them down the rabbit hole. So if you
Yeah.
stop, you breathe, and then you reflect on that thought, right? Try to get down and really dig into that thought and try to figure out what's happening, what's really happening. You know, we oftentimes just let the automatic thought happen, we don't really pay attention to it, and then we just carry on, right? But there's always an underlying cause or a reason why we had that thought or that feeling. So it's important that you kind of reflect back and try to figure out, try to ask yourself questions or ask yourself why you feel that way or why you think that way, and kind of just dig down a little bit deeper and peel back the layers.
Okay. Do you have any like suggested questions for people to consider asking themselves when they're trying to kind of figure that out?
Yeah, so I mean that's really great question because that's the next step in the
Oh,
process,
okay.
right? Is to
Don't jump ahead, Miranda. I'm that kid in grade school who like asked the question before the teacher's like, I'm about to tell you. Just
no,
be patient.
I mean that's good. I mean it leads us right into the next one. So yeah,
Sure.
ask would be the next step in the process, right? Because you
Okay.
want to suddenly shift your attention from that negative thought and start challenging it a little bit, right? One
Mm.
thing, I had a support group leader when I was in the military for MS who had this really great saying where he says, you know, take your thoughts to court, right? You're going to
Oh,
be
I
the
love that.
prosecution and you challenge them with these questions, right? So that's what these questions are, is you take that thought and you challenge it, you know, is this thought really helping me right now? Is this
Mm.
thought verifiable? Is it valid? You know, is it going to get me to where I want to be? There's multiple questions that you can ask yourself, and I think it really kind of depends on the thought and the feeling as well, that you'll know which questions you need to ask to
Sure.
kind of determine if this thought is really valid or not, right? But you really want to kind of take it to court and challenge it. Otherwise, it's going to keep popping up. If you just kind of suppress it, you're going to notice that that thought keeps reoccurring, keeps popping up. And oftentimes when you suppress things, it comes back with a vengeance.
I love that. I just listening to that advice right now. I think, yep. No matter who you are, that you know those ones that always come up, like the same stuff that you dwell on, and you never really quite get past it. It's always sort of like floating around in there, ready to bubble up, and like doesn't serve you. If you're a living, breathing human being, right? You have those things. So taking your idea or taking the thought to court is such a cool way to think about that, where it's like, challenge that thing. Is it serving you? Is it helping you? And the other thing to remember too is that it's just a thought, right? We put so much weight on our thoughts and just believe them to be completely 100% true. Whatever it is that we come up with. I come up with these crazy ideas all the time. And in my head, I'm like, this is real, right? This is real. But really, a thought is just like an impulse in your brain. You can choose to sort of just like let it go, or you can choose to hold on to it like it is the most important thing ever. And that's the power of this process, it seems, where you can, you know, have a process in place to better navigate those sort of, you know, moments that everybody has, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so take the thought to court. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you bring up a really great point when you talk about how you just constantly focus on it, right? And I mean, that's the power of our mind, is that we have the option and the choice on what we put our attention and our focus on. And
yeah,
so often it's that negative thought or that negative emotion or that negative experience, right? We don't want to let it go. So we keep ruminating on it. And by just keeping it there and constantly focusing on it, we're bringing it into our reality subconsciously, but we are.
yeah, yeah. I think everybody knows of like a memory that you have that you feel like is a real thing that happened, but you know in your heart that maybe it didn't, or maybe it didn't quite happen exactly the way that you remember it, but you've told yourself that it happened the way you remember it over and over and over again. So now you're like, yeah, that's the truth. Like you've just like made it true, even though it probably isn't. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like a
Yeah.
random birthday memory from being a kid or something like that. And you're like, oh, that was the birthday that, you know, nobody showed up to my party. Where, you know, do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's just these silly things that you sort of tell yourself and hang on to,
Yeah.
which is an interesting way to think about it, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, you can sort of construct these memories or these thoughts and make them so important, or you can choose to do the opposite.
Yeah. Yep. And I think
Yeah.
that's why this next step in the process is so important. And
Yeah.
that's the redirect step, right?
Oh, okay.
Because we're putting so much time, so much focus, so much attention on the negative that we need to shift our mindset into the positive. And you can do the same. You can change or recondition, I want to say, not change, but you can recondition your mind to have those automatic positive thoughts rather than negative, right? But it
Awesome.
takes the same amount of consistency and time and attention that you're putting on the negative. So by redirecting, you know, those negative thoughts into power statements or into positive thoughts, you're helping put that attention and that focus on those thoughts. And then from there, it's just kind of repetition, right? The more you do it, the more you practice, the better you're going to get at it. And then soon it's just going to be hardwired into your brain, and it's going to be an automatic thought that pops up suddenly, right? Rather than that negative one that you used to ruminate on.
That's awesome. So can you give people an example of sort of like a standard power statement that people could adopt for like what we're doing in this like crisis right now?
Well, I think it depends on the person, you know. You have to get a power statement that kind of resonates with you, kind of fits your personality type. You know, for
Okay.
me, I'm pretty introverted, so I would say, you know, one of my power statements that resonates with me a lot is I can, right? Because so often when I go to do something or when I step outside of my comfort zone, I suddenly start getting flooded with all this self-doubt, right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I can't
Hmm.
do that. Or like, you know,
Yeah.
so one of those redirects or power statements for me is I can, like, you know, why not? Why not me? So that's,
Yeah.
you know, it's finding that statement that really resonates with you. And it could be something as simple as, I got this, right? You know, it's a power statement that resonates with you and fits your personality type.
I love that. That example created a couple more for me, or brought up a couple more for me with people that I've been coaching. We weren't necessarily talking about it in this context, but one of the people that I coach often tells himself that he's limitless. Like his little power statement is, I'm limitless, which I think is amazing.
Yeah.
I also have a client right now that is working on, you know, just going through some tough stuff, like taking care of her business. And so her current sort of power statement is, I'm handling my stuff. It's not stuff, it's a different word, but you get the idea. So she tells herself often, like, I'm handling my stuff, right? I got all these things going on, stuff I'm dealing with, things I have to take care of that I'm not excited about having to take care of, but, you know, I'm in a place where I'm handling my stuff. So I think those are actually all really great examples. Something else that people could tell themselves now too, especially in the example of, you know, getting stuck with negative thoughts that come from a lot of like social media and news and stuff like that. People could remind themselves, you know, that they're safe, that they're healthy, right? To just sort of stay grounded and not get lost in being afraid of what might come.
Right. Yeah. I think that is important to remember, and something to focus on too, right? You know, a lot of things, like we talked about, when you focus on it, you kind of bring it into your reality. And sometimes, you know, things can mess with your head a little bit. So if you're like, oh, am I sick? Do I have the virus? Right? Like focusing on that, you can kind of start to make yourself feel a little sick. So it's important to focus on those positive things, like, you know, I am safe, I'm healthy.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, this is super, super helpful. I love this whole process that you're walking people through. I think it's great advice during any time, but especially right now. Just going back to you and how you help people and speaking to your audience a little bit, what would you say is your unique message that you want the world to hear?
My unique message. Yeah.
No pressure, right? Such an easy question. What's the one thing you want to tell the world, Ashley?
Yeah. I think the one thing that I want people to know, and it's something that I struggled with the most, and, you know, still struggle with sometimes today, is that, you know, our thoughts and our words have power. You know, they have power. And I don't think that we kind of understand that our brain is constantly listening, right? Whether it's the stuff on social media or it's the things, the words that are coming out of your own mouth, right? Our brain is listening to that, and it's taking that information in and it's storing it and kind of hooking that up with those negative automatic thoughts, right? It's like, oh, this is good, like I can use this later, right? And it's optimizing itself by storing these and compartmentalizing it to use later in similar situations. So there's power in the words that you use. And I think we need to really focus on shifting our words and our language to a more positive context, right? Instead of saying like, I can't, you know, say I won't or I don't. Because a lot of times we say I can't as an excuse, but really we just don't want to, or we just won't do it. So I think that also kind of helps shift the responsibility a little bit from an excuse to saying, yeah, I'm just incapable of doing it, to, well, I'm just choosing not to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a totally different way to approach it, right? I can't is like a powerless thing to say. Like, it's out of my control. There's nothing I can do. I don't have a choice. But, you know, I won't or I don't is a choice that comes from you, right? I'm not doing that thing because I have other priorities, or, you know, it's not something that has been bestowed upon me, right? It's something that I've actively cultivated for myself in my life. And that's just a much more powerful mindset. So I love that. Love that. So good.
Thank you. Yeah.
Good. Okay, well, one more question, and then I will let you off the hook for the day. You talked us through this 5-step process. Is there a special gift or something that you have to offer our audience, hopefully, that can help them with that?
Yeah, so definitely the kind of special gift that I have available for my audience and future people that are interested, obviously, is a worksheet PDF, is a PDF worksheet that I created called Stop Your Stinking Thinking, right?
Love it.
And the stinking thinking obviously refers to the negative thoughts. So on this worksheet, it kind of provides you just a brief description on what negative thoughts are. And then it goes into a diagram that shows us how we get stuck in this negative cycle and how our actions, attitudes, and behaviors kind of generate those automatic thoughts and our emotions and behaviors, and then we just get wrapped up. And then obviously the 5-step process that we talked about earlier is listed below that cycle, right? So if you catch yourself stuck in this negative cycle, use that 5-step process or tweak it a little bit to something that's more personal for you, right? You can remove things, add things, whatever works for you. But that 5-step process is in there to help people break the cycle. And then on the second page of that worksheet is kind of an activity an activity that people can do. So if they need help walking through the process, right, it will take that negative thought and you can walk it through the process. I wrote down some challenging questions that people can ask themselves during that moment that might help kind of break down that negative thought, and then how we can transform it into that power statement.
I love that. And I think, it's helpful advice at any time, but I think especially now, that's super helpful. So for people to have this tool, saved on their phone or printed and put up in their house somewhere easy where they can grab it, I think that's just going to be an incredibly helpful tool for people right now when you do find yourself stuck, because every single person has that going on right now. Somewhere to go where you can just sort of follow along the steps and get yourself into a better place. I think that is such a great thing to share with people right now. So thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad that we had an opportunity to talk about it and kind of spread this awareness a little bit and help people out.
Yeah, Ashley, listen, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much for just being who you are and staying focused on your mission and what you're doing for others. You inspire me every day. And I was just so thrilled to have you be a part of the Recreate Your Health project. So thanks so much.
Yes, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here.